Hi George, thanks for joining us today. If you can just share who you are and what you've done.
Yeah, George Yule. I've been involved mainly in the energy business for most of my career, although latterly I joined the world of sport when I was full-time vice chairman at Aberdeen Football Club.
Yeah.
But probably better known for my business career over the decades, and also as a former president of the Chamber of Commerce.
So what was your first job? What happened when you left school?
Well, when I left school, I was pretty ignorant academically, so I actually started an apprenticeship with British Rail out at Inverurie. But then Dr. Beeching closed it a year into my apprenticeship, and so I needed to get transferred into Aberdeen to go with CPT, Consolidated Pneumatic, to finish my apprenticeship. And from there, generally, once my time was out at mechanical engineering, I floated between marine engineering before I eventually went offshore, as did many people in my generation. Yeah.
So when did you go offshore?
My very first offshore trip was to the Zapata Ugland semi-submersible in 1975.
Wow.
And in those days, when you travelled off to your work in a helicopter, you basically, well, in my case, t-shirt, jeans, and trainers.
Yeah, no
Yes, sir.
safety suits and everything.
No survival suits.
Yeah.
You know, I think you had a life jacket, an inflatable life jacket tied around your waist.
Yeah.
But we used to do day trips, shuttling back and forth to the Forties field.
Yeah.
So you'd go on a 7 o'clock flight in the morning, out to the Forties, and then you come back at 6 o'clock at night. And we did that for about 5 weeks every day.
Wow. Okay. So that was 1975.
1975, and I worked offshore for about, I would say, about 5 years. I hated it because being a sportsman, being stuck offshore on a Saturday afternoon was a killer.
Just frustrating.
Yeah, but
Because you didn't have Sky Sports and stuff like we've got now.
no, well, I think at that time you might have just had colour TVs. And then latterly I finished up my offshore career working on Piper Alpha.
Right. Okay.
I was field engineer on the Piper Alpha, and very fortunately I left the Piper Alpha before the tragedy set in. But even during my time in Piper Alpha, which probably about 9 or 10 months, I was evacuated 3 times.
For what reason?
Well, I think in 2 of the cases it was down to weather. Bad weather had resulted in neighbouring semi-subs breaking their anchors and started to drift towards the platform at Piper Alpha.
Okay. So that's the sort of thing that could have happened anywhere.
It could have happened anywhere.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what the other one was, but I do remember being hoisted on it's called a billy pew. It's like a
Yeah.
bosun's chair
Yeah.
from a helideck, 200 feet down onto the back of a supply boat.
That looks like the sort of thing people would nowadays like an activity at a theme park. A Billy Pew.
Yeah, it would be. It wasn't great fun, and even though I've also been flying all over the place for about 40, 45 years, I'm still not a hugely comfortable flyer.
Okay.
So when we got evacuated once from a Piper on a helicopter, an S-61 Sikorsky, I can still remember to this day, from 1980, the helicopter pilot saying, "Good evening, gentlemen. It'll take us about 50 minutes to go to Aberdeen and the conditions are horrendous." And I thought, great, just what I needed to hear.
Just panic.
Yeah, well,
A wee bit of stress.
easier said than done.
Yeah. So
So when I stopped my offshore career, and I just made a spontaneous decision. It wasn't pre-planned. Taxi came to our then house in the Bridge of Dawn to pick me up to go back to the Piper. I said to the taxi driver, "Sorry, chum, I want to be going." My bags were packed and everything to go offshore.
who was that for? Who were you working for?
It was a company called Strathclyde Process Engineering.
Okay.
SPEL is the acronym. And so I packed in my offshore career without actually having a job.
Okay.
So the following day I went into town armed with a CV, went to a recruitment agency at the time called London Bridge Engineering, who were in Market Street. And they set me up with an interview as a day rater with Shell and Altons
Okay.
as a planning engineer, office based. Went along there, and by good fortune, the head of planning at that time, Stuart Beveridge, had also worked at Inverurie in the railway. And so we had something in common there. We hit it off, and got a long story short, I was offered a job on a consultancy basis, which I was delighted to accept.
Good.
I'd only been there about 3-4 months, and my then boss quit, and then Shell offered me his job on a staff basis, and I spent the next 16 years with Shell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And then you got a bit more entrepreneurial after that.
Well, there was an event before that, because there was a period within that 16 years in Shell that I actually broke my employment with them to go and accept my very first managerial job with Aberdeen Service Company,
Okay.
ASCO.
Yeah.
At the time, they provided bodies offshore.
Yeah.
So they were looking for an offshore operations manager based onshore. And I suppose I was headhunted, offered the job, first managerial job, took it. And within 6 months, I'd come across 2 situations that I'd never been trained for. One of which was the Chinook helicopter disaster, when as offshore manager, responsible for the guts of 300 guys going offshore, we lost 12 employees in that crash.
Yeah.
So as a young manager at that time, I had the misfortune of having to go around 12 bereaved families within hours after the crash.
Yeah.
And then some weeks later to go around 12 different funerals. And, you know, they say you're supposed to take a positive out of every negative if you can. And the positive I took out of that month's horrendous experience, because it was very traumatic, was it gave you a real perspective in life to tell the difference between what's important and what's urgent.
Yeah.
And I think that's followed me not only in personal life, but where I've been involved in companies and businesses. I think it's helped the fact that I've got that perspective to convey that to staff as well.
Yeah.
Because sometimes in business, you'll probably know yourself, you're rushing about trying to get a tender in at the last minute, or maybe clients are being unreasonable in some demands, and people are getting very excited about it. And it's just the ability to calm people down.
Yeah.
Hey, look at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Look at perspective.
We'll get there.
Yeah. So yeah, I know. And the other experience I had as a young manager was when the North Sea workers went on strike, and that was horrendous. You know, dealing with that. Dealing
And
with
these
some-
were both within 6 months.
Say again?
These were both happened within 6 months.
Yeah, one was the strikes followed the helicopter disaster probably about 9 months later.
Wow.
And there you come up. I mean, bear in mind, you're dealing with people who come from all parts of the UK, not just Aberdeen. And you come up some real hard-nosed trade unionist, loyal guys and stuff like that. And I've generally been quite a reasonable person through my life, and that's how I manage people as well, on a very reasonable basis. And it's just having difficulty dealing with people who are unreasonable
Yeah.
in demands. So I went back into Shell again. I left that, and then I went back into Shell, armed with that kind of experiences. And then I was put into a position of being a drilling engineer, a support engineer for the Brentfield,
Right.
based on shore. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Worked with some terrific people, some terrific supervisors for most of the time there. But I guess towards the late 90s, say about 95, 96, Shell were going through a review. It wasn't a time and study review, but it was something similar. And then I think the nail in the coffin, as far as I was concerned, was we had a young 24-year-old engineer from the consultancy doing this review, shadowing us on our daily job
Okay.
to decide what was value added and what was non-value added. And with all due respect to that young lad, his previous job had been he'd been a second engineer in a company that made
He couldn't actually evaluate it correctly.
biscuit tins.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
And I thought, right,
So how did he end up in that position?
I have no idea. He was
Yeah.
a consultant. And so I decided at that time to go. It's getting silly now. So then had that, as you say, I had that entrepreneurial gene in me that I really wanted to work for myself.
Yeah.
So did a kind of Dragon's Den thing with Aberdeen Asset Management and 3I's, both private equity companies in town. Pitched an idea towards them. I was seeking £1 million. Pitched an idea towards them. 3I's felt that the business I was looking to set up wasn't big enough for them in terms of monetary value. They were looking for something bigger. But Aberdeen Asset Management, they were quite happy to back us, and I received £1 million startup funding. In fact, we were their first oil and gas startup company.
So what was the business?
It was a company called Clean Ocean.
Okay.
And basically the strategy was there. It was an environmental company, but our USP was to put the environmentalist in the same office as the engineer, so you would come up with the best practical environmental option for cleaning the seabed of drilled cuttings.
Okay.
So our idea was, when you're drilling downhole and you're bringing all these cuttings up to surface, whereas in years gone by that had just been dumped overboard, whether it was water-based or oily-based mud, our idea was to not take them off the platform, but actually to put them through a slurry machine.
Okay.
And turn the cuttings into like a toothpaste.
Right.
And eject it back down a redundant well bore.
So where did you get this idea for?
I probably pinched it for America.
Right. So it's something you'd seen in the past when you were working for Shell.
Yeah, it was. I had some experience of that, but the pivotal moment was that there was new regulations coming in 2000 called the OSPAR regulations, Oslo Paris regulations, that would prevent the overboard dumping of cuttings into the ocean.
So something had to be done.
Something had to be done. Unfortunately, and it wasn't something we could envisage, within 9 months of starting up, the oil price dropped to $9 a barrel, unbelievably.
What year was that?
2001.
Okay.
Oil price dropped to $9 a barrel, and so nobody was drilling.
Yeah.
And if nobody was drilling, there's no
Don't they drill this? Yeah.
And if you know drill cuttings, then...
That's no business.
So within 6 months of starting up, we'd had probably a $500 million cash flow deficit that we needed to sort of breach. So having attracted some former colleagues into this new start company, we were based down at Maitland's Quay at the harbour, and people I knew well. Within 6 months, unfortunately, I needed to start laying people off.
Yeah.
So we kept that going.
And you know that market's coming back. You know the oil price is back.
Yeah, the oil price at the time came back. I think it was 2002 to a very healthy $27 a barrel.
Yeah.
And by that time, we'd built a bit of technology that was ready to go. We just needed clients. And so we actually got a knock on the door one day, and it was BP were wanting our cut-and reinjection system for a field off of Peterhead, Miller Field, which was great. And then a week later, I got another knock at the door from a Nigerian client wanting the same unit.
Okay. And you only had the one?
Yeah, but we sold it twice.
Nice.
Because the Nigerian client wasn't wanting the unit for about 6 months.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, we could build another in that time.
Yeah.
So when he came over to see the unit that we'd sold to BP, it was still in our yard.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, that's exactly what we want. I says, right, it's yours. When do you need it? 6 months' time. Okay, we'll pull it apart, refurbish it, even though it's brand new, and get it ready for you. What colour would you like it? Oh, that colour's perfect. Good.
That's the colour you're getting it in.
And then I remember telling the bank, yeah, we've got, because bear in mind we had a £500 million deficit and we're in overdraft. And I remember telling the bank, about the Nigerian client. They says, no, don't touch Nigerian customers with a barge pole. I says, guys, we didn't have an option.
Yeah.
So what we did is we demanded, I think the total value of the order was $2 million, US dollars. We demanded $1 million deposit, got that. And then we said, right, the remaining balance, the other million, would be a letter of credit with an international bank, which means providing you deliver, puts on the purchase order,
You get your money.
automatically released.
Yeah.
And that's what
And they were
happened.
fine with it.
Got it.
Do you remember who the Nigerian company was?
Yeah, now the guy's name was Effie Obigi. What was the name of the company? No, I'm sorry,
That's all right. And did you do any more business with them, or was it just that one deal?
just that one deal.
Yeah. And
But-
you
but
said you said at the start of this, so you left and then you went and spoke to two private equity companies about your Dragon's Den thing and asked them for £1 million. How easy was it then?
It's easy, as you would expect, because the private equity companies, before they put money into business, they really do their diligence.
Yeah.
And so I thought we'd never get to the end of writing business plans and doing cash forecasts, but we did. And you've just got to, any problems come towards you that way, any challenges you've got to meet them head on.
Yeah.
You can't put them to one side. You've got to meet them head on. And it was a great relief when we got that startup funding from Aberdeen Asset. Started in a blaze of glory down at the harbour. We got some good contracts as well, consultancy contracts to back up our technology as well. And that kept us going probably for about 4 or 5 years before eventually it was obvious that other companies in town, much bigger companies, international companies with much deeper pockets than us, had come up with alternatives.
Similar technologies.
Not similar technology. What they'd done is they built hundreds of what's called skip and ship sealed containers,
Yeah.
sailed them out to a rig on the back of a supply boat, unloaded them from the boat onto the platform, and as the cuttings came up, they filled these bins, sealed bins with drilled cuttings, and then unloaded them back onto a supply boat, took them back on shore on the back of a lorry, through the streets and dumped into landfill sites.
So just a low cost option, really.
Taking all that drilled cuttings like through the streets, through the country, taking them on shore and dumping them in landfill. Eventually, further legislation came in, and before they could be dumped in landfill, they had to be put into a reuse condition.
Yeah.
And so what used to happen is the drilled cuttings were baked into briquettes,
Okay.
and then briquettes built walls for the landfill.
And when you went and asked for that money, you just came for Shell. For the due diligence, was it based on you or the other people in the company, or was it like, what did you have to go and?
Yeah, well, it was a blend of being based on me, based on my knowledge of what I was talking about,
Yeah.
and based on market conditions.
Yeah. Today, if you were to do that, if you left Shell today and went to do the same thing, how easy do you think it would be to get that
No,
support?
it's not easy. It's not easy.
Do you think it would still happen?
If the timing was right at that time, and the timing was absolutely spot on, because we were about 18 months ahead of legislation coming in.
Yeah. So it fitted with regulations and things.
And the oil industry is notorious at times for just not taking the right actions at the right time, leaving things to the last minute, and then you've got all hell breaks loose, panic, get everything done at any price.
Yeah.
And we wanted to be ahead of that.
Okay. Wow. So and then from there, so how long did that business run?
We closed down Clean Ocean.
Did you sell it or it shut?
No, we shut it down. We had been offered a local businessman, well-known businessman, who had a knack of buying companies for £1. He could see we were struggling to overcome that £500,000 deficit, so playing catch up.
Yeah.
So he came up and visited me one day and said, I'll give you £1 for your business, but I'll give you a job. And I remember saying to him, sorry, but I'm from Aberdeen. I know too many people. I can't do that and leave creditors high and dry. So we made a pact to, that I would keep going, get all our creditors paid. And then once that was happened, because bear in mind, for about 18 months, at the worst at the time there, I'd been operating without any salary.
Yeah.
I've been living on credit cards.
Yeah, just keeping it going.
So one of the bits of advice I was given by somebody who was already in business was, you know, if it starts becoming an unpaid hobby,
Get rid. Yeah.
drop it and get on with your life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we put the company down 2002, 2003, but as I say, we didn't leave people high and dry.
Yeah.
You know, it would have been quite easy to put the company into administration or
Just
stuff
walk
like
away
that.
from it.
Yeah. But again, based on my earlier point about drawing positives out of negatives, I probably learned more about business in 4 or 5 years at tough times
Yeah.
than I did 20 years of good times,
Yeah.
you know. So from there, I needed some respite. So I befriended some Norwegian businessmen in my days with Shell, and they offered me a job as a director with a rig company based in Oslo.
Okay.
So I went across, enjoyed Norwegian salaries, and came back and spent it in Aberdeen.
Okay.
But then I'd been there about 3 years or so. Then I got a call out of the blue, and this was from a friend of mine's called Gareth Jones. I didn't know him at the time, but his name's Gareth Jones. He owned a company called Dominion Technology Gases.
Yeah.
And he said, I've got a project happening in the Great Yarmouth, George. I've invested £1 million in it. It's in a bit of a wobbly state. I wonder if you would go down and help me recover some of £1 million back.
So you joined them, what, 27? 2007, something like that, you joined them?
Yeah, it would have been about that time. So again, I was commuting between Aberdeen and flying to Norwich and then picking up a hired car going to Great Yarmouth.
Yeah.
And my remit was prepare a company, run a company day and day, but prepare it for sale.
Yeah.
In this case, timing was absolutely perfect because I'd only been there about a fortnight. Somebody came knocking at the door and says, we understand you're in the line of business of doing pressure testing. Yes, that's correct. Would like to give you this piece of work, and this piece of work was about 400 grand.
Okay.
So I kept this going day on day, but in the meantime, I needed to do my own diligence, looking at what the company had, what it didn't have in terms of processes, equipment, and then gradually over a phased basis, sell off the equipment that I had. It was a very expensive equipment. And so Gareth's investment, the £1 million, whereas it looked as though at best he would get 20 pence in a pound back on his million,
Yeah.
as it turned out, he probably got about £1.20 back on his million.
And what made him invest in that in the first place, in the situation it was in?
I think it was the then managing director had an idea, and instead of going to private equity, somehow he knew Gareth, and Gareth agreed to fund him for equity in the company.
Yeah.
And
Ended up with the company.
well, yeah, because there was one or two things not quite right. And so the guy who he was initially funded, he was removed from the company, and then Gareth obviously took the company over. But then it only lasted about 18 months, but had a good outcome for Gareth.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, although I'd never met Gareth before this, I become one of his best friends.
Yeah.
And then he then said, I'd like you to come and run Dominion Technology Gases and Dice. I didn't fancy it. It wasn't my industry. I was
not?
more into drilling.
Okay.
And not only that, but I live in Anderson Drive beside King's Gate. And at the time, I didn't fancy the commute back and forth to Dice.
Okay.
I just didn't like Great Northern Road as a commute
So what was
route.
your plan instead?
My plan was hopefully to go back out with Norwegian friends and pick up where I'd left off.
Okay.
And then Gareth came back a second time. He said, George, I'd like you to come and run the company. I said, sorry, Gareth, just nae for me, it's nae my industry. And then he mentioned to me he was looking to start up a couple of branches, one in Tananger in Norway and the other one in Bergen. So I says, well, I can meet you in Norway because I'm quite familiar with the Norwegian setup. And cut a long story short, I met Gareth. We went and visited the locations. ultimately, well, he built the branches, went out for a meal at night, whether it was too much Coca-Cola or something like that. He asked me again, George, I want you to join a company, but here's the deal. I went out. I want you to run a company. I want you to prepare it for sale. And if you sell a company, I'll give you 10% of its value.
Yeah.
Oh, that's different.
Yeah. I'll commute to Dice for that.
Yeah. And I said, being an Aberdeen, I says, yeah, but what's it worth? What's a company worth? Oh, I'd been offered 12, 14 million from a company in Aberdeen to buy it. So even though I hadn't left grammar school with a lot at all levels at the time, I could work out 10% of 12 or 14 million.
Yeah.
I thought, yeah, no, it's fine. He says, I think it might take us about 5 years. I says, well, Gareth, I think at the most it'll take us 2 years. I've been along this route before. Okay, again, timing was absolutely sweet. I came into Dominion. I was the MD. We opened up the 2 branches in Norway. For good measure, we opened up a branch in Baku. We already had something in Singapore. The oil and gas industry was running like clockwork. We had good products, very good products, doing bottled gas, industrial gas, diving gas. But more so, we had a very good rental tracking system.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think at the time, I think when I joined, we were doing about 5.1 million top line and probably just less than 800,000 bottom. And so got on with running the business, looking for skeletons in the closet, before I went to private equity, and generally getting the business in good shape. We then engaged at the time with Simmons, as they were, Benoit Piper Sandler,
Yeah.
who were the Premier League deal makers in town. We ran a sale process initially with 5 interested parties, 3 from trade and 2 private equity. And then the way the system operates is you do presentations, 8 questions to each of them individually, and then they're invited to put in their bids. You go around first round, whoever's lowest bid drops off.
Yeah.
So you keep doing that until you get to, let's say, the finalists. And fortunately for us, the finalists in our case was the 2 private equity companies.
Okay.
Private equity companies, one from London, one from Manchester. And they were very hungry to get into the Aberdeen lucrative oil market.
Yeah.
And so they kept increasing the bids. They were playing one off against the other. And so ultimately, or bear in mind, we were having to run the company as well as run the sale process.
Yep.
So it was quite a lot of pressure
What
on
going
us.
on?
So ultimately, we got an astounding offer, but conditional was exclusivity to finish a diligence. And I had no problems with them doing the diligence because I knew
Done
everything
all the
was in
work
order.
before it.
Yeah. So we got the deal and we sold the company on the 27th of May 2007, which was 16 months after I joined.
Yeah.
So it wasn't 5 years, it wasn't even 2 years.
Yeah.
And we sort of got more than twice what we were expecting.
Okay. So where is that? Is that 24 million?
No, more than twice. It was actually about 34 million.
34 million. Well done. And you got your 10%.
I could work it out.
Are you straight at his door?
No, the condition there was I needed to stay on for at least 3 years.
Yeah.
I was invited to roll over some of my money
Into the company.
to take shares.
Yeah.
So I rolled over quite a lot, and so became probably the biggest single individual shareholder in the company.
Yeah.
I negotiated my own salary package. I then moved from MD to become chief exec. We rebranded the company from Dominion Technology Gases, which is a bit of a mouthful, down to Dominion Gas.
Yeah.
We then opened a branch in Port Harcourt in Nigeria. And after about 4 years, my wife was pregnant with our daughter, and I'd promised my wife that if we if we ever got to the stage of her being pregnant with a daughter, I would be spending more time at home.
No for boys, just for a daughter.
Well, I already had boys. So
No coming home for them.
bear in mind that, you know, during my Dominion days, which were great, I'd been traveling all over, you know.
Yeah.
Sounds lucrative, but if you're going from airport to hotel to office to hotel to
Yeah.
airport, it's not that lucrative.
Yeah, it's not as fun as it sounds.
No, in particular if you're not a great flyer,
Yeah.
you know. I've been out to Dubai for a weekend. Dubai for a day. Singapore for a weekend.
Yeah.
And, you know, it takes a lot out of you.
Yeah.
So I came back and then wasn't sure what would happen, what would do, but we had a cushion, you know, to sit on, obviously, with the proceeds from a Dominion sale.
Yep.
Not long after that, I got introduced to a boy called Robbie Gray, unfortunately the late Robbie Gray, from a company in Newborough called Romar.
Yep.
And speaking to Robbie, and he had an idea about, he'd an existing company and he was looking to roll it into something else and wanted me alongside on. Unfortunately, that idea didn't work, but he invited me to come into Romar as its executive chairman with him and his partner Martin McKenzie to build, grow and exit Romar.
Yep.
Did that, it would have been, 2000 and maybe 11. And put out a plan saying, well, here's what we need to do, guys. And again, I gave him a forecast when a potential sale would happen. And that was fine. We went about building a company there. It was a great little business they had at Newborough. It was about capturing metal swarf, when you were doing milling, downhole piping, stuff like that. And I remember saying to him, it's a great market there, guys, even if you're doing side tracks and drilling, or when it comes to decommissioning, you're doing all the unwinding downhole and bringing on this swarf metal up to the surface. You need to contain it because it'll be like razor blades. But you'll never do that with one unit. So they invested, instead of taking dividends, they invested more money back into the business and they built more units. And delighted to say that they got the sale.
Yeah.
However, in between times, I'd been approached by Stuart Mill at Aberdeen Football Club to go and join them. Don's one in a great place in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
You know, that type of, before 2010, kind of generally bottom six. And at the time, I had a number of roles in town. You know, I was chairman of the Sports Village. I was president of the chamber. I was also chairman of a charity, and I was at Roma. And so I met with Stuart, and I said, Stuart, I didn't know if there was enough time in the day for me to do another non-exec job.
Yeah.
And he says, no, we don't want you non-exec when you come in full time. Oh, okay. Okay, I'll need to think about that.
Yeah.
I always thought I'd sign for Aberdeen, but I didn't realise about 40 years later.
I'd be in a suit.
So at the time, Craig Brown and our Chinooks were the manager.
Mm-hmm.
So after a good deal of thinking and debating, and my wife eventually said, look, senior blood, why don't you just do it? And the boys who were just quite wee at that time, they're only about 7 or 8, they were all excited about getting to meet the famous players.
I'm buzzing.
I had to look at it from a more business-like point of view as a breadwinner for a family. But decided to take it because my view was, well, Aberdeen are so low now in the league.
Yeah.
At
It
that
can only
time,
go up.
It can only go up, exactly.
Yeah.
And because in my various roles in business, I'd met and knew a lot of people, good people.
All sporting.
Yeah, then I had a very good network. So I went for it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'd like to think the legacy from my time at Pataudry, in no order of priority, was training facilities, getting them that,
Yeah.
getting rid of debt, starting up a community trust, which has gone on to great
Doing
things.
really well now. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's flying.
And then things like, well, a friend of mine's, a business friend of mine's, Mike Loggy at Saltaire, got Mike involved in sponsorship. Mike was a great sponsor.
Yeah.
Yeah, a great sponsor for a number of years at Aberdeen. And then I was fine and was going along fine. Club was doing well on the park, off the park. We were making the right connections. We won the League Cup in 2014.
Yeah.
Decided that I wasn't going to sit in a shop. I was going to be out there and amongst supporters, businesses, hospitals, schools, whatever. People who kept coming to us when things weren't great. And then 2000, end of 2017, I was speaking to the club doctor about a problem I'd had. He says, well, you should probably go and get a prostate check. Did that. Fast forward 2 months. Surgeon says, yeah, you've got cancer. Oh, okay, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
So obviously a period of reflection, going back to telling the difference between important and urgent. What was urgent was getting a training ground in stadium. What was important was family, me. So came out of that, decided to come out of that, and went through got the prostate operation, got it removed, recuperated from that, and then thought, like, what am I going to do now? I thought, well, what you can do now, George, is set up a consultancy based on your learnings over the period.
Your experience, yeah.
So I set up BGE, which is an acronym for Build, Grow and Exit.
Yeah.
As a consultancy, got quite a lot of small owner-managed companies as clients. I was ticking along merrily with that, enjoying what I was doing, very flexible, and still in the business limelight in town. And then in 2021, sitting at my desk, working at my laptop, out in Mercer, a client there, and strange feeling going down my left-hand side. 45 minutes later, I was in A&E with a stroke.
Yeah.
Never saw that coming. No previous history of that.
And what was that due to? Stress or?
Well, I asked the same question of the consultant. What's that due to? Because A, I'm not a huge drinker.
Yeah.
I'm not obese. I've never smoked in my life. And I'm not overweight,
Yeah.
per se. And the consultant said, well, strokes generally fall into 3 categories. And the category that you've fallen into is luck of the draw.
Okay.
You know, it wasn't generic. You've no family history of that. You're no obese or bad lifestyle.
Health, yeah.
Third category is luck of the draw.
Yeah.
So 6 weeks spent in hospital between Forester Hill and Wood End. Got discharged, well, pushed to get discharged because I was getting very impatient. Watching the poor lad across from me in Wood End having to get hoisted out of his bed and hoisted back into his bed, spoon-fed, unable to speak. And I said to the consultant, if I don't get out of here, my mental health's going to be badly impacted.
And how was the short-term effects of that stroke on you? Did you lose speech? Did you struggle to walk?
No, my speech, my memory, my logic was okay. I couldn't walk.
Yeah.
I was unable to walk without some kind of mobility aid. Couldn't stand up in the shower. I needed to get a seat to sit in the shower. So I'd gone from kind of one day doing everything for everybody that I wanted to do,
Yeah.
to the next day not being able to do anything for
Being
myself.
immobile, yeah.
So that takes some getting used to be
Yeah.
quite honest, and particularly with somebody who can be as
Active as yourself.
active, that's a word, not impatient.
Yeah.
So you've got to learn to adapt in that
Yeah.
situation. So it came as a real shock to me, but then gradually, whilst I never really engaged in any NHS physio support because of the NHS crisis at that time, and COVID and all that sort of stuff, I was very fortunate I was able to get the private physio to assist me. It's still work in progress, 4 years down the line,
Yeah.
you know, but I can get about, I can walk, I can drive, I'm back doing some work.
Yeah.
My logic's good, my memory's good, and as my wife would say, your speech is too good.
Yeah. So your consultancy that you started in before you took that stroke, I'm guessing that does that still exist today, or you shut that down?
No,
Now
I
you're just doing some consultancy work.
to allow me to get into rehab and
Yeah.
recovery. I shut that down.
Cool.
So, just without any warning, taps get turned off, both from a lifestyle point of view and a financial point of view.
Yeah.
You know, but fortunately, as I say, when we did the Dominion deal, I'd invested in a number of properties in Aberdeen to fall back on for our later years and for our kids' future as well.
Yeah.
You know,
And how would you view Aberdeen as a place to set up a business today?
no, Aberdeen, unfortunately, compared with Aberdeen that I grew up in Aberdeen that I was in business in, no, it's I'm afraid it's a shadow of what it was. It's not to say it's finished,
Yeah.
but it's just changed very different. I deplore what has happened to the city centre in terms of getting about,
Yeah.
putting obstacles out in terms of alleys in, bus gates, hiking up car parking charges.
Yeah.
I absolutely deplore that. The evidence can be seen every day.
Well, it's
You know,
restricting businesses. You can see businesses going out of business every day.
I am totally anti shutting down the oil and gas fields in the North Sea.
Yeah.
I'm 100% for energy transition, but transition in my terms is over a period, not overnight.
Yeah.
And I think what the UK government's doing to the North Sea, and of course because of a lot of our dependency to Aberdeen as a city, is deplorable.
Yeah. And just, you mentioned about the helicopter crash. So how would you deal with that as a young manager? How?
That's a good question, Kenny. You've actually got to use your basic human instincts and compassion.
Yeah.
I can remember probably about the second or third day after the crash itself. Bear in mind, a lot of the victims couldn't be pronounced deceased; they were pronounced as missing.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, but I can remember driving down to a place called Wakefield down beside Sheffield.
Yeah.
A place I'd never been before, and it was a row of terraced red brick houses like mining villages and stuff like that. And meeting this particular family, wife and two wee girls, and I mean, she was just so dependent on her husband for everything.
Yeah.
And I remember going into this cramped house, a wee house, I'd never been doing it before, squeezing through the lobby because there was bikes in the lobby, going into the living room. They clearly weren't a well-off family. And she was just devastated about the fact that her husband was missing. And obviously I was the guy who in their minds had sent her husband offshore.
Yeah.
And they were asking me details about it. Well, at that time, a lot of the details about the crash hadn't been made public, and we couldn't speculate. We needed to follow the lines laid down by the police and Shell.
Yeah.
We couldn't speculate. We had to stay on script all the time. And I had a chat with them, and I was explaining how we thought things would evolve in terms of arrangements, because a lot of these people couldn't afford funerals.
Yeah.
And they were worried about that as well. How we're going to cope. And so we were explaining the logistics that we'd understood it from Shell. And I remember on the way out, which is then back through that lobby, one of the wee girls said to me, Mr. Yule, do you think my daddy would have suffered? I had to go, well, how do I answer that question?
Yeah.
And somehow, what came out was basic human instinct. I says, no, your daddy wouldn't have known what happened. It would have happened instantaneously.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that. That's probably what I wanted to hear.
Yeah. And who went on the meetings with you? Was it just yourself?
At that time, I was going round the relatives myself, yeah.
Wow.
And then round the funerals.
So how was that for you mentally? And I mean, that must just emotionally must just kill you.
It was, but I couldn't show that during this period. But what I will confess to is at the end, after the last funeral and after I got home, I burst into tears. You know, it was my turn for an outburst with everything I'd been through. Fortunately, and it wasn't designed this way, fortunately, again, basic instinct, from the very first phone call about the helicopter crash.
So were you working at that time, or you were in the house when you got that phone call?
No, I got the phone call. It was an afternoon. Yeah. I was in the office. From that first call, right to the end. We logged every call, logged every caller,
Yeah.
you know, and
And you would have worked with like a first response team or something like Petrofac or something
you know,
like that. No.
they weren't on the go. There
Wow.
was nothing like that.
These things have been put in place since.
What we had two police inspectors. I can remember them well. And Ronnie Cooch was one, and Ian McIntosh, I think it was the other police inspector. And they were tracking me as I was going around the country visiting bereaved relatives. And you know, they give me guidelines as to what would happen,
Yeah.
you know. And then with meetings with Shell, meetings with Wood Group, who were another contractor involved, meetings with the police, and it was all, guys, we've got to keep a tight circle. We can't stray away off script.
Yeah.
And only the police are legally entitled to declare somebody dead to a family. You could say missing, presumed dead, but you can't say
Dead.
somebody's dead until
They've declared it.
declare it. So yeah, that was a pretty horrendous time out for a month.
Yeah.
You know, but you just got again.
And how do you go back to normality after that?
Well, you have to. You just have to. You kind of have to park that. Unfortunately, because I'd logged everything, and then before I got back to normality, and after the final funeral, and the days after that, I actually wrote a summary of that whole episode from our point of view,
Yeah.
from my point of view, and presented that to the police and to a survival training company, emergency training company at the time up in Alpens. I've still got a copy of it. And I spoke to the survival emergency training company specialist, and he says, but George, this is one way of getting your relief food, putting stuff down paper.
Yeah.
Because not everything was done tickety-boo.
Yeah.
There were mistakes made along the way, inevitable mistakes made, because it was a huge thing at the time.
Yeah.
I think it was 1986,
Yeah.
November 86. It was huge. And of course, being so remote, because remains of people were being brought up to Sunderland.
Okay.
And of course, even we were asking, well, how do we get them back?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So it's a real learning curve, but you really couldn't show your full emotions in front of families.
Yeah. You had a job to do.
You had a job to do, and it sounds a bit cold and clinical, but if you broke down, you'd be no use to the families.
Yeah.
On reflection, there were some humorous moments as well.
Okay.
I would have to say.
Yeah.
I can say that now. I can remember going to a deceased funeral service in Kirkcaldy, and at the end of the funeral service, we were invited back to a local hotel. I think they call it a wake.
Yeah.
In Ayrshire, it's called a purvey. And I was approached by this woman. They said, oh, I'm the ex-wife of the deceased. I understand the company's got life insurance from a ex-husband. Yes, that's correct. I'd like to make a claim for that. At the time, I could only take our details. So, take your name, who you are, your contact details.
Pass it on.
I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
I needed to speak to insurers. I couldn't tell them anything. That was fine. After she went out the room, another woman came in. I'm his current partner, and I understand there's life insurance. That's correct. I'd like to make a claim for it. Same protocol. I said, wow, how do I sort this out?
Yeah.
Came back to the office, got a phone call. Hello, I'm so-and-so. I've been seeing him in Aberdeen for the past 12 years.
So you want to make a claim as well?
I want to make a claim. Okay, took the details. At the end of the day, it was quite a simple decision. Because he'd never divorced, the only legal entity was the ex-wife.
Yeah. And that was it.
Yeah. The other, when I say humorous, it wouldn't be humorous to the family, but it was funny.
I guess you've got to take the positives for this wherever
Yeah,
you can, just to keep you going.
Well, you do.
Yeah.
It was a young lad, he was getting buried. It was down in Ayrshire. Again, kind of mining village. Then we walked, the service was in the house, and then we walked to the churchyard. and he was getting lowered into the ground, and the hole wasn't big enough. So one of the family members, a male, started stumping on the coffin, get it to fit in. And I'm there thinking, what?
Yeah.
What else going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like that. Again, no humorous, but in
Yeah.
hindsight, a few decades later, you're thinking, how could that be allowed to happen?
Yeah. What happened there? So,
So
going back to yourself then, you've obviously had a wide-ranging career from startups to
Yeah.
massive operators and everything in between. How do you how would you lead then as a manager or employing people within these businesses or growing these businesses? How has your leadership skills developed to that time?
well, I've always considered myself pretty much a people person, engaging and working with people rather than people working for me. That's because ultimately I'm from Maastricht. I was an apprentice, so I've come kind of from the shop floor. However, I think the fact, and certainly during the time in the oil industry, I worked offshore for 5 years, so I had offshore experience, so I could relate to things.
Yeah.
I worked for a major oil operator, Shell,
Yeah.
and I worked for contractors, so I had quite a good all-round knowledge
Yeah.
in the market and the industry. And then I've kind of never been shy, and I've always been keen to ask questions. You know, I just think learning is lifelong. It's
Inquisitive.
yeah, it's learning is a journey. It's not a destination. And even now, at my stage in life, I'm still learning things. You know, I always made a point. You try to learn something every day, whether it's how to wire up a plug, change a spark plug, how a drilling rig works and stuff like that, and oil separator, stuff like that. So I am naturally inquisitive. My wife would say nosy.
And what about from a starter perspective? What's the most important thing? You've been involved in a few.
Yeah.
They've all resulted
Yeah.
in being quite successful.
You absolutely need to know your markets. You need to know what your products. You need to know your clients. You've got to have hunger and desire. You've got to have a insatiable appetite and hunger to succeed. You've got to have energy. You've got to have flexibility. And as I said before, you've got to surround yourself with lots of good people.
Yeah.
Internally in the company and externally in your network.
And how have you, dealing with good people is all good. What about people that have maybe been negative or haven't been right? How have you dealt with them?
Got a good bit of advice there when I was at Shell. I asked the same question. You know, if change is needed and people are pushing against change, how to deal with it? And he says, well, George, I'll give this bit of advice. Take your pearls of wisdom in terms of why change is needed and roll it across the table to whoever's pushing back against it.
Yeah.
I says, yeah, okay. But what happens then if they still push back? He says, take that same pearl and wrap it up in a brick. In life and in business, there are radiators and drainers.
Yeah.
You need to surround yourself with radiators.
Yeah.
Drainers, if they're not on the bus, they're off the bus.
Yeah.
Simple as that. You know? I remember the first time I had to sack somebody. I mean, I was sweating during the night, thinking about it, how am I going to do this?
Yeah.
But then a penny dropped, sorry. I says, well, what that guy's doing by cheating us is actually impacting my kid's legacy.
Yeah. And that was it. It was easier for you.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And what about then? You've dealt with, obviously, gone into private equity companies looking for funding, gone into private equity companies trying to sell businesses, also try to sell to private investors or sell to other companies. What's the most challenging?
It's a seemingly never-ending list of questions to be answered, data demands.
Yeah.
You know, investors, whether they're corporate or private, aren't going to give them money up lightly. You absolutely need to nail the answers.
Yeah.
You need to ensure your company is squeaky clean. You need to do your own due diligence, because if you get an offer subject to due diligence, and in due diligence they find some kind of skeletons in the closet, Best case, you'll get less of an offer.
Yeah.
Worst case, they might walk away.
Walk away, yeah.
So it's better to be prescriptive and sort out the problems before it goes on for
Yeah.
sale.
And what about for, obviously, the way the market is here in Aberdeen? You mentioned the profit levies and everything else, and it's getting harder for businesses here.
Yeah.
A lot of companies here are internationalizing now. They're trying to go abroad. They're trying to do work in Asia, Brazil, Africa, Middle East, wherever. You've obviously done that a couple of times. So what would you say is what the companies need to get right to internationalize their business?
You've got to behave like a local. There's no point in going across, even to Norway, there's no point in going across there and hoisting a salt there. That doesn't work. You really go.
So what do you need to do?
You need to behave like a local.
And do you need local people, or you can do that?
Yeah, you predominantly need local people. You need the right mix there, particularly if there's different languages involved. Again, you need to fully understand the market in terms of who your competitors are, who your targets are,
Yeah.
and what potential obstacles there would be. Because you've got a track record in the UK, you can't go over there and demand business. You have to earn it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And so what would you say, what's the biggest challenge for an Aberdeen-based startup company right now?
Where in Aberdeen?
In Aberdeen, in oil and gas.
Yeah, I think it's a combination, Kenny. It's a combination of the fiscal policy. It's so uncertain here in terms of taxes, regulation.
Yeah.
Um,
And do you see these things changing?
I'd like to hope so because, I mean, the UK and as a nation, we're running a hell of a deficit without us being able to switch off billions
Yeah.
from potential, taxes from the
The oil and gas.
oil industry. And if we go too far, we kill a golden goose.
Well, you kill the supply chain, and then where do you go?
Yeah, well, there is that. And, it's just at times it's so difficult starting up a business nowadays. And of course, the current fiscal policies, tax wealthy, tax business owners. And what we're trying to do is not just make a living for ourselves, but actually provide a living for other people as well.
Create jobs.
And, at times you're almost tempted to think these days, why should I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's too much hassle.
There was so much opportunity in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, so
Yeah.
much opportunity.
So away from work, what are you doing?
Well, obviously sports, anything with a ball. Obviously grammar school at the time I was there, when they get to play football, I played rugby.
Yep.
And I played football at the weekends. Lifelong golfer, loved playing golf. And of course,
Where do you play golf now?
well, I didn't play golf now because I'm still getting back to being fit enough to play golf. But I was a member at Cruden Bay Golf Club for about 30 years. And then after I got my prostate operation, I decided to go to flatter lands
Okay.
and join Ballata Golf Club, which is a lovely golf course, very flat.
Yeah.
But then the stroke knocked that in the head as well. So fortunately, I did actually manage to hit a basket of golf balls at Paul Laurie's a few days ago with my youngest son. It's quite depressing actually, not so much what I'm doing, but in the next bay to him, seeing how he hits it and how hard he hits it. So yeah, I'm kind of, right now, I'm probably restricted to something like a 7-iron and a wedge and a putter without actually going gung-ho with drivers and 3-woods and stuff like that. So that's a frustration for me, but it's a goal also,
But you're still involved with universities and other companies.
Yeah, very much involved with the University of Aberdeen Business School and the Development Trust and the court, which I enjoy. I've got an inherent belief that people in my vintage should be taking our lifelong experiences and passing it on for the next generation.
Yeah.
I do that whether it's schools, university, or whatever. I don't go and tout that, but if I'm asked to do it, I'll be prepared to do it.
Yeah.
Even 2 weeks ago, I was asked if I could give a talk to a group of business owners on a Shell Livewire
Okay. Yeah.
course up at Woodbank.
Yeah.
with the elevator, and took some past presentations had done, consolidating lessons learned, advice, and stuff like that.
Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, I do.
So what would be your advice? What would be for your lessons learned or your career? What would you advise to?
Probably in no set order. If you've got something you really want to do, get it out of your system, do it.
Yeah.
If you never try it, you'll never know.
Yeah.
Secondly, nobody's going to hand you stuff on a plate. You have to earn it.
Yeah.
You know,
You'll get nothing for nothing.
the only place reward comes before work is in the Oxford Dictionary. Okay, that's the only place you'll find reward before work. So you need to earn it. As I've said before, get a good network around you. You kind of do it yourself.
Yeah.
As much as you think you can, you kind of know your market and never give up. But if it becomes an unpaid hobby, drop it.
Yeah. Move
Move on. Yeah.
Yeah. George, thank you very much for joining us today. Much
Yeah, you're very
appreciated.
welcome. Very
Thank you.
welcome.